I think it's probably worth talking about the kind of cameras, from, like you were saying, from iPhone to like a cinema camera, like a Red camera or an Arri Alexa. The cameras run a gamut, and all of them have the ability to do a certain amount of things and have a certain quality of image. And it's kind of up to you to sort of suss through and decide what's both best for you and best for the production. Like a cinema camera like the Red, or like a Red cinema camera or the Alexa, tends to need to be built out, meaning it doesn't have a lot of little accoutrements built in. It is just the body, the sensor, and that camera's whatever it's
usually
built,
a control, like a control screen, color science,
precisely.
And stuff like that.
Whereas a field camera will have built-in NDs. It's built so that you can pop it on your shoulder and go to work.
Yeah. I mean, and I think I'm trying to think. That you just the biggest thing is like, just especially in this day and age, is just like finding the camera that you like as far as cameras go, and using it, you know what I mean? So like, if you're one of those people that just love an iPhone, you love the look of an iPhone, to build that iPhone out and to be the best little iPhone that can, and focus on your lights and stuff like that. And if you're the guy who wants to shoot on a cinema camera, full studio kitted out, and slug it out with that thing, then more power to you, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, there's also going to be productions that ask that of you. They're going to say, we want this, we want this style, and then you're going to have to be knowledgeable or informed enough to say, okay, this equipment takes care of this, or this equipment facilitates this ask. So being well informed and well versed in the variety of different camera types and camera builds is pretty crucial as well. So
I mean, I think too, like knowing the equipment, knowing the technology. I mean, at the end of the day, we're part artist, part plumber. You know what I mean? Like, it is just a really incredibly technical field, and I think that's one of the things that kind of helped me ease into it more. Like, because maybe now finally, like years later, I'm like, oh, maybe I am an artiste. But you know what I mean? For the most part, it's like, oh no, this is like ones and zeros. Okay, cool, I get this. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Or this goes here, this goes there. I'm building a Lego set when I'm building up cameras and stuff like that. So to me, like, that's what kind of like one of the things that kind of got to. And then there's a great feeling when you're listening to a really cool story. Or there's, you're on set and you're just like, I'm a part of this. This is kind of like, sometimes they're crazy things to be a part of, like certain parts in people's lives that nobody else would ever know, you know what I mean, if you weren't there. So I think that's kind of a neat part as far as the storytelling. So I guess, should we move on to like just like storytelling in general from the non-technical standpoint?
Yeah, man. I think so. Again, just staying in the field of documentary or even reality television, documentary production. So knowing what your subject is and knowing how long the production is going to be is probably one of the very first steps. And then fleshing out your day is pretty important. You want to create things. You want to know what you're covering that day. So let's say we're following a barber. We're telling the story of a barber. So we know the barber's location. We know that we want to learn what the barber's history and what got him into that career. So those are things to consider for your interview. So on the day that you're shooting, let's say we're going to the barber shop, and we're going to follow our barber to the shop, see the people he's interacting with, etc., and then schedule, shoot him actually cutting some hair, and then schedule an interview. One of the things that you want to do is create what's called a beat sheet. And this is just a way for you to keep track of the various things that you want to film throughout that day. Write down your beats, know what you want to cover, or call it a shot list if need be. But regardless, like, make sure that you're as prepared as possible for what you're going to shoot. That's one thing to consider.
No, I think that's, being prepared, you know what I mean? I think we all are especially when we first start off, or what I refer to as spraying prayers, you know what I mean? It's like hosing everything down, and you've got
spray and pray.
Yeah. You just like, you're hosing everything down, and like, you're shooting and shooting and shooting, and then like by the time you get like to the edit, you're like, what did I shoot? Because
Yeah.
I shot so much that I have no idea what to shoot. Then you have to re-go through all that, and you have to make sense of so much information.
You don't have the luxury of a script. I mean, at least with a script, you've got, you've got Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, your denouement, your climax, and all that jazz. Well, with a documentary, you're going to be discovering things on the go. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can't organize what you're doing and have a plan. You should always have a plan, because either A, you're editing it, or somebody else is editing it, and you need to be prepared and protect that edit and have that edit at least fleshed out to a certain degree. There's always going to be an element of the unexpected, and that's going to develop your story in ways that you weren't anticipating. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be as pre-planned as possible. At least know your days and know where you're going, and give yourself an idea of what you're going to follow. That goes without saying for every type of film production or commercial production, any of that. There's going to be a decent amount of organization, and it's just going to make your life a lot easier. Just regiment it to a degree, and then play jazz, improvise a little bit. Of course, you're going to do that, but definitely have a shot list. Definitely have a beat sheet. Definitely have prepared questions of what you're planning on inquiring, within that when you get to the point where you're actually interviewing your subject or your contributor. So those are things to consider for that. You want to know the story you want to tell. Yeah. Are we talking about this guy's shop, or are we talking about this guy's life? And going back to the example of the barber, okay, we're making a documentary about a barber. Is it about that barber, or is it about the process of, or is it about the profession of being a barber or a stylist or whatever? That will define what you're going to cover. If you're telling this cat's story, then yeah, cool, we're going to be in the barber shop and we'll see what he's doing, but we want to know who he is. So you're not going to necessarily focus on the process of cutting hair. You're going to be focusing on Jim the barber.
Yeah.
So it's those sort of those delineations are pretty important. Is this a process show, or is this a story about a human being? And you should consider those details when going into it. Certainly it's going to be an amalgam of the two, but definitely identify what your story is about. Is it a human story? Is it a process story? What's the element that really needs your attention? And then determine how you're going to film that in regard to what you choose to shoot. Like if you're shooting a construction show, if you're filming a couple buying a house, is it the process of finding the house, or is it the couple's story and why this house is important to them, etc.? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that you definitely want to consider is where the story, what is the main point of this. And so we talk a little bit about finding interesting subjects.
Yeah.
Making sure that it's it's just you can it's not just some barber. There's nothing wrong with some barber, but what sets him apart from other people? Is there something that he does that's special? Is there something that he does in a certain way that nobody else does? Because people want unique. You know what I mean? So I think that's one thing too. Especially what certain considerations do you take when choosing your subjects or.
It's about being thoughtful about your subject matter. And I know this sounds kind of ambiguous, but it's really not. You need to approach every subject with a mindfulness and a thoughtfulness, the same way you would craft any other film, a narrative film. You just have to be. You should be considerate of that sort of execution. It's not enough to just, like you said, spray and pray. It's not enough just to simply follow the story. You need to think about what sort of nuances there are in this subject story. And that'll inform how you film it. That'll inform how you light it. That'll inform, what style that you execute it in. Is it going to be verite? Is it going to be, are we going to be a little bit more of a fly on the wall? Or are we really going to dig deep? What elements make this subject who they are? And dig into those things, does this person have a colorful history? Or rather, what is their history? Did they take this job because it's therapeutic? Do they do this job because they inherited it? There are all these little little nuances that will inform your story and make your story deeper than what the surface element of the story is. And those are the things that you want to those are the things that you really want to gravitate to.
Cool. All right. No, I mean, I think that's great. Like, I mean, those are great, I think, insights for people. So then I think the next thing is, what do we want to do next? So we've talked about like a little bit about like, finding the interest of your subjects. We did talk a little bit about tone, I think, with
Tone?
you, or, you know what I mean, like, or putting like, I don't know, like, I guess we did talk a little bit about tone and like shaping.
Shaping images, like,
like, like boxing people in when they're feeling lonely or
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that, and contrasty shadowing.
It's not. Yeah, I think it's worth saying that it's not just your subject it's not just the subject, the people that are in front of your lens that's crafting the story. You are too. It's still a visual medium. Consider how you're filming. Consider, what your camera's doing. Craft the shot. Think about your. I want to say composite, but I know it's not the right word.
Your composition.
Thank you. Yes, geez, I don't know why I couldn't think of that word. Consider composition every time you're filming. Yeah, I know sometimes it feels like you're just going to be on shoulder and just following the action. It's going to get boring, Really consider your shot every time. Think about going to the end of your lens a little bit and backing up, so there's a little bit more compression, a little bit more portraiture, a little bit more prettiness to the shot. Make sure you're hugging a little bit of foreground. I mean, these are not dead set rules, but basically what I'm saying is consider your image and make it as interesting as possible. Make it as visually gratifying as possible. You're still making a picture that people are going to want to see, and you want to consider that as you're filming. There's a lot to pay attention to when you're filming documentary style stuff and verite stuff. Documentary style stuff, rather. Verite is the actual style of,
Yeah, and just to clarify, so going to the end of your lens, basically, if you got a 24-70, you're going to go to a 70 millimeter. So what happens? It's like a very hot debate subject whether lenses zoom and cause a compression. They do. Like you can definitely see it. Just like take your lens from a 24 to a 70 or whatever you have, 24 to 105 or 18 to 55. But you will see a compression, and basically what it's doing is it's bringing your subject in the foreground closer to the background a lot of times, but it's also kind of giving you like, I call like a cheater bokeh, basically.
Sure.
So it's a good way to make like a 2.8 look like a 1.8. It just seems like it gives you a little bit more life sometimes and separates your subject from, the image. It makes them kind of pop. Like we've said, I think before, is you're basically trying to make a 2D image look 3D.
Right.
So, and that's considering your foreground elements, considering your rear elements. I mean, there's just always a lot of things to think about. But the main thing is that one, you're showing up, you're thinking about all the things that could possibly go right. You're thinking about all the things that could possibly go wrong. And that you're there to do your best, you know what I mean? But like just come with a plan, come with some sort of thought into it,